Canadians have been dipping into their home equity lines of credit during the pandemic. A new survey by Leger for Ratesdotca and BNN Bloomberg found that half of those polled who have a HELOC have used it in the last 2 years. And older Canadians are more likely to have bigger balances. Director of Content Strategy at Ratesdotca, John Shmuel, joins us now with more. So, John, of the homeowners surveyed in this, how many of them did have a line of credit?
Hi, Jacqueline. Yeah, so we found that 27%, or just over 1 in 4 Canadians we surveyed, had a HELOC, and just over half of those had a balance on their HELOC. The interesting thing is that large balances, so those over $100,000, were about 10% of the respondents. And as you mentioned, they tended to skew a little older, which isn't too surprising because, those older homeowners have enjoyed quite some time of good, strong home price increases and home equity gains over the past few decades.
I did think it was surprising, John, because I was thinking, if you're getting to your later years, it's not even, it was. Now I'm going to offend a bunch of people, but it was 55 and up, I believe, who had a larger balance. I'm not calling anyone out, but you don't want to be sitting on a lot of debt if you're within 10 years of retirement, because you gotta deal with that. So that did jump out to me, but I wonder if maybe you could tell me a bit more about why people were turning to their HELOCs. What were the common uses?
Definitely. First, you make a great point. Obviously, the older you are, the more you want to be paying off debt as you get closer to retirement, and the more you want to be sitting on a nest egg to use in your retirement. We found that most people were using their HELOCs for renos. That was the biggest single use of HELOCs. About 43% of respondents said they did it or they took out a HELOC, to do renovation. And then 30% said they used it for debt consolidation. We found 13% said they used it for a vacation. So, if you're using a HELOC for something like a renovation and maybe your home is part of your retirement plan, it might make sense that you still have HELOC debt, as you're older. But if you're taking out a HELOC, to buy a new car or go on vacation, and you're accumulating this debt as you're older, thinking that maybe the value of your home is going to go up, that's where you might run into trouble, especially as we're now entering this environment where, HELOCs are variable rate lending products. Oftentimes, you're seeing interest rates go up as the Bank of Canada increases them. So you're paying more, your debt. You have the ability not to pay down your HELOC, make interest-only payments. So that debt can start to weigh on you if you're not careful.
Yeah, I wonder, of those questions there for uses, there was an other category, but was there any question about, whether this was the bank of mom and dad, borrowing from their home equity to, help their kids purchase a house?
Yeah, definitely. We don't have insight into that on this particular survey, but it's obviously one of the big questions. We hear anecdotally through mortgage brokers that, yes, parents in this extremely expensive housing market, even with prices coming down recently, parents are still dipping into their own home equity to help their children get into the market. That puts you at risk, right? If you can afford it, it's not a huge amount. That's different. But if you're stretching yourself, you're close to retirement, and you're taking out $200,000, $300,000 out on your HELOC to help your children with a down payment, that's putting potentially yourself financially at risk and compromising your entire retirement.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of the balances that people are sitting on or saying that they are sitting on, what does that look like, and what are they doing to pay it down?
Definitely. So the good news is that the majority of people that we surveyed actually had smaller balances for their HELOCs. So these were not, massive balances. We found that the majority of people have less than $50,000. So 58% said they have an outstanding balance of $50,000 or less. 10% of those with the HELOC have an outstanding balance of between $50,000 and $100,000, and then 10% have an outstanding balance of more than $100,000. So the large HELOC holders are a small part of the market. We don't have too much insight into what percent of those 10% how much larger than 100,000 they have, right? So someone could have a $500,000 or $1 million HELOC, and we don't have that kind of insight.
Right. And roughly, I think it was about half of them, or 55%, are paying down the principal. But I mean, that leaves a large, group that maybe is chipping away at, interest as it collects, but not actually getting to deal with the debt.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and that can be a good strategy if interest rates are low and your variable product has a small interest rate and you can easily make the payments. But in this environment where payments are going up and now all of a sudden you're having to scrounge together enough money to make larger interest payments, you might even have less of a chance to make principal payments. So I do wonder. I'm sure we have people in the HELOC segment who did stretch themselves, who were relying on low interest rates, and we're probably going to see what happens. We have the Bank of Canada meeting in about 2 weeks now, and the expectation is we might see a 75 basis point increase. I've even heard rumors of a full percentage point. So if we see something like that, that's just more pain for HELOC holders. So, my advice would be to anyone who has a HELOC that can make principal payments, that was relying on low interest rates, start paying it down in case we do see increases in the future.